Ms. Mariam Jaafar.
Deputy Speaker, I start with declaring my interest as a managing director and partner of a consulting firm that does work in the area of climate change consulting. In my budget debate speech, I spoke on how Singapore can lead the way in climate change, in our own way, taking into account our strengths and our constraints. Since then, the climate change space has only intensified, with companies facing ratcheting pressure, not only from climate activists, but also from investors, governments, and their own citizens, especially the youth. In May, the Dutch court made a landmark ruling, ordering Shell to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions 45% by 2030 from 2019 levels. It also deemed Shell responsible for emissions from its customers and suppliers, what we call Scope 3 emissions. The ruling also frames Shell's activities as a violation of the human rights of the citizens of the Netherlands. The ramifications could be far-reaching for the fossil fuel industry, as well as the countries for whom the industry makes up a significant portion of GDP, including Singapore. It is clear the time for climate change action is now. As we continue to manage COVID-19 as a society, we must fundamentally prioritize climate and sustainability to build back better. The best COVID-19 recovery plans will fight climate change too. And so I was glad to hear the Minister reaffirm our commitment to invest in a green and sustainable future, even while budgets are reallocated to extend more support measures for Phase 2HA. Singapore has made bold climate commitments in Green Plan 2030. Minister Grace Fu has recently detailed plans on how the public sector will lead the way in areas like energy, waste, transport, infrastructure, to reach peak carbon emissions around 2025, 5 years ahead of the broader economy. All this is very, very positive. Madam Deputy Speaker, about 65% of global emissions needed to get to net zero can be reduced with existing technologies that are mature or in early adoption. An estimated $100 to $150 trillion investment over the next 30 years, more than in digital transformation, is needed to reach net zero globally. So alongside commitments and policies, we have the opportunity to stimulate green growth with infrastructure investments and support for climate solution innovations, that is, investment in new technologies and enablement of new business models and markets as our core tools. Our strong financial position has always given us an edge. Now the Singapore bonds give us another powerful tool. As we think about recovery, let us all ask ourselves if we have done all we can to accelerate those areas of climate mitigation that maximize speed and impact, such as the expansion of public transport, deployment of large-scale renewables such as solar, building retrofits, expansion of the energy grid, including EV charging points, incentives for improving industrial efficiency, and the scale-up of carbon capture, utilization, and storage. There are many quick wins, reducing emissions through low-cost or mature technologies that typically also generate savings. So I urge the government to prioritize and not delay on climate change, on projects with climate change impact, for want of money or manpower. And indeed, let us double down on them. And for projects that have been delayed by COVID-19, these actually give us an opportunity to accelerate some transitions now. Take the delays we have seen in housing projects. Madam Deputy Speaker, when HIP projects were delayed for some blocks in Woodlands, some of my residents came to me on a particular issue, clothes drying racks. You see, a few years ago, when the HIP plan they were asked to vote on, in the HIP plans they were asked to vote on, had L-shaped CDRs. But in the meantime, newer retractable CDRs came on the market. Since there was a delay, my residents asked, why can't we get the latest? Now, in this case, the answer given to us was that the stock had already been purchased, and that was what the residents had voted on. Of course, they had not been offered retractable CDRs to vote on back then. So while CDRs may appear trivial for some, but there are parallels to housing, to climate change solutions in housing. HDB is already testing and implementing multiple initiatives for more sustainable towns, such as solar and smart LED. More ambitious moves are being implemented, such as the centralized cooling system in Tengah Ecotown, where the district-level scale gives the required economies of scale. These projects actually put us ahead of many other countries. As we work through the backlog of new builds and improvement projects, I hope we will take the opportunity to consider if some changes ought to be made to the original plans to accelerate the conversion of every town to an eco-town, to leapfrog. And that as an advisor, I will soon see in the NRP and HIP proposals not just new playgrounds and new toilets, but also new coatings and new energy-efficient kitchen and other appliances offered as options. Done at scale, it could pay for itself. The technologies already exist in housing and in other sectors. For more costly levers and investments, let us accelerate efforts to support the growth of financing that mitigates climate risks, as well as the growth of market for green bonds for sure, but also transition financing and other tools that will be needed to realize the goals of the Paris Agreement. Let us collaborate in ecosystems, companies, investors, government, universities, and research institutions to accelerate the speed and scale of change and overcome traditional barriers via collaboration and risk sharing. Whether it is petrochemicals, transport, or shipping, an ecosystem approach is necessary, as well as a mindset shift. We need to start looking at companies not only as sources of emissions, but as providers of climate solutions that create business values. The first generation of green champions, companies like Next Era, Ørsted, generated annual total shareholder returns of 30%, on par with big tech, while oil and gas majors had a return of negative 18%. Companies must see the business opportunity in climate action. Otherwise, the time may come when difficult and painful choices will need to be made on the sectors and industries that we can no longer afford in order to meet our sustainability commitments. So I call on companies to first ensure that their activities do not undermine climate action, and then to advocate for stronger policies and to promote green growth and jobs, to reassure the government that we are on the right track. Madam Deputy Speaker, Minister Ong yesterday repeated several times how our unique position in the fight against COVID-19 has been due to our unity and trust, how government, businesses, and people work together. If we work together to put sustainability at the heart of our recovery, our COVID-19 response will be remembered as one that not only overcame a short-term recession and avoided a mid-term recession, but also created meaningful long-term impact that will benefit us all in Singapore and the world. Thank you.